Hi everyone, I hope you're having a great weekend. It's Saturday here in Cairns and it's quite windy actually. It's forecast to be 32 kilometre per hour winds, and I'd say that, well, it said 31 kilometres when I just checked the actual site recently, so I can believe that because actually I've had doors slamming shut in the house. That's how much the breezes have been going through, because I get quite a nice cross breeze here, which I'm not complaining about. It's actually really good, especially on the weekends when the creche isn't around, so it's nice and quiet and you get a beautiful cross breeze, so no complaints at all there. I do have a complaint against the mongrel who nicked my little lock. I had one of those little tiny locks for my letterbox, which is actually inside the property. So I don't know who in the hell did it, because we've got security gates now, so you can't just wander in. But someone nicked it. I mean, geez, the crime around here, maybe it's making me even more determined to maybe get to the beach suburbs and get away from this area. I think this is a pretty high crime area in a suburban area near the centre of Cairns. Labor Party hasn't done much about policing, that's for sure. They've been very lax on that, especially with youth crime, and that's another one reason I really want to see Anastasia get the big A. Just one of the few issues that comes to mind. But look, I better not ramble too long, because as usual there's plenty of news and it's coming from Victoria, but not so much Dan centric, so at least I'll give you a break from a bit of Dan bashing. You know how I feel about him. I think it's fairly well established, and I even had it in my walk and talk video from the one I showed, I uploaded yesterday, so I wasn't even aware of that. But yeah, he's a topic of conversation. But this is more about the lockdowns, and a few people have been getting a bit jack of the lockdowns, and they're basically flooding the inner suburban beaches, which is understandable because people are going stir crazy. So thousands ignore social distancing measures and flood Melbourne beaches to soak up the sun after weeks in lockdown, prompting a stern warning from Daniel Andrews, right-hand man, amid fears warm weather this weekend could lead to catastrophe. Catastrophe? God, they speak in apocryphal terms, way over the top. How about we just turn the meter down a bit and start talking a bit of common sense? Melbourne's beaches were packed as warm temperatures hit Victoria. Beachgoers were seen without masks. Oh! Shouting. Oh my God, people shouting. Cavorting on the sand. Authorities fear the move could derail Victoria's hard-won corona progress. No, what will derail their hard-won corona progress is having an incompetent government who can't do contact tracing and can't look after a quarantine hotel. That's what the problem is. How about taking some responsibility, you assholes? Swimming will be popular this weekend. 28-degree temperatures forecast. People urged to stick to step 2 rules. Wear face masks so virus doesn't return. The face mask thing is really up for contention of whether the effectiveness of face masks. They have to be worn correctly. And if they're outside, I mean, seriously, I find that ludicrous. If you're out in the beach area, where you got plenty of air around, breezes, sunshine, very low risk. So I just don't buy that. It's just another way of controlling the populace. That's what it really comes down to. It's about power. Now, sun-starved Victorians have flocked to Melbourne beaches, many without masks, amid fears warm weather this weekend could see undoing of the state's progress against the coronavirus. I would have thought the opposite. Actually, warm weather is exactly what you want if you want to combat the coronavirus. I mean, these people got brains in their heads? What are they thinking? I mean, this makes sense. Victoria's Chief Health Officer, Brett Sutton, took to Twitter. Oh, brilliant. So he uses Twitter, which is not exactly the greatest place to communicate. It's basically a sewer, I find. I don't deal with it. To issue heartfelt plea on Friday after distributing footage emerged of hordes of young people partying on Melbourne's beaches, ignoring social distancing and gathering in large groups. Well, people have been ignoring social distancing up here from the word go. So I mean, just get used to it. People are people. They're not going to be basically, unless you're in like a North Korea situation where you have absolute control and fear over the masses. What do you expect? I mean, I'm not saying that I think there's a good reason for the social distance. I don't have a problem with that. I try to avoid getting to close contacts, and I do use basic hygiene. I'm quite happy with all that, but I think this is right over the top, a lot of this stuff. Again, they're the cause of the problems with their incompetence with the way they've handled the coronavirus. After 2 months of tough lockdown, many Melbourneian residents rushed to get out and party in the sun as temperatures climbed above 25 degrees on Friday, which is normal. What would normal people want to do, especially if you've been bloody locked in effect in prison for so many months? They packed Williamstown, St Kilda and Port Melbourne beaches for their 2 hours of exercise time. Reporter Paul Dowsley broadcast disturbing footage from St Kilda Beach of hundreds of young people cavorting without masks, shouting for joy. How dare they be happy? You're not allowed to be happy in Dan Andrews, Victoria. That is illegal. They fine them 5,000. I reckon, yeah, every one of those people who are having a good time, fine them 5,000. How dare they? And not respecting social distancing rules. Then the craziness broke out as unmasked revellers swarmed him as he did his live cross. Oh my God, the media was in danger. Oh, the poor media. Oh, we should just bow and scrape to Channel 7 News. I mean, we should just basically kiss the ground they walk on. I mean, give me a break. God, and the emotive language they use in these reports, you know, it's right over the top. It's yeah, okay. Well, I'm getting emotive, so I better settle down. Oh, here's a great story. This one will make you laugh. It'll make me laugh anyway. I think it's a ludicrous idea, but you be the judge. How Melbourne could get its own currency to help boost spending in bars, cafes and restaurants across the city after being hammered by the strict corona lockdown. The Melbourne dollar is an ambitious idea coined by Lord Mayor Sally Cap without an R, maybe the R should be added, I think, with this idea. Each dollar would cost 80 Australian cents to be spent at participating venues. Miss Cap promised to carry out the scheme if she's re-elected in October. Melbourne could get its own currency to boost spending in bars and restaurants left battered by coronavirus lockdowns. The Melbourne dollar is an ambitious idea coined by Lord Mayor Sally Cap, which would potentially deliver 25 million into the state's fragile hospitality industry. So what's so great about this scheme? Well, it does go into more detail later, but to me, it's just one of those voucher systems. Hardly radical idea. And look, why don't you just provide rate relief to businesses trying to start up? Cut out the middleman, because all this is basically paying off middlemen to set up this system, which is just so much BS. I don't know what a Melbourne dollar, what the hell does that mean? It's just another voucher system. And look, I mean, as I say, I wonder if Sally's getting a bit of a payback setting this scheme up from the people, the middlemen. You just never know. Food venues brought about 2.5 billion into the economy each year before the pandemic forced waves of businesses to cut their staff or close their doors entirely. Each dollar would cost patrons 80 Australian cents and would have to be spent at participating eateries and bars in the city, the Herald Sun reported. Under the scheme, residents could purchase $500 Melbourne dollars for 400 Australian dollars. Oh my God, how confusing is this? I mean, what is this going to be a permanent thing? We're going to have the Melbourne dollar, we're going to have an exchange rate. Is that this brilliant idea from Sally Cap? I thought this woman must be totally ignorant of economics, but I looked up her CV and she's got a Bachelor of Honours in Commerce, or actually in Economics and Law at Melbourne University. It just doesn't say much for university education. I've just got a humble bachelor's degree in economics from La Trobe, and that's a piece of crap, I've got to say. But I don't know if Sally's really picked up much either, because I think this is all BS. Just reduce the cost of doing business in Melbourne. That's the best way to go, and then you don't have to pay middlemen to do it. You just cut the rates or whatever you can do. I mean, there are many ways the council could help out businesses. This is garbage in my opinion. I mean, a lot of people won't be attracted to this for a start, and it's just complicated. I mean, what's the point? And they'll probably just put their prices up 10%, so that you're supposedly getting a discount of 10%. Well, yeah, well, how do we know that they're not just going to up their prices? I make no apology for this. Our city has been disproportionately affected by the pandemic and needs as much help as we can give. I agree, but this is not the way to go, Sally. Melbourne City Council would pour $5 million into the scheme to ensure businesses aren't left out of pocket. Again, just give people running businesses discounts on the normal charges that the council levies, and there's plenty of charges, I'm sure. Ms. Cap said the program suits all budgets and supports all venues willing to participate. Well, I, for one, wouldn't be involved in this piece of crap. I wouldn't ever sign up for it. So there's a lot of people that just wouldn't bother with it. And so, you know, whereas if you give the discount on rates to each businesses, you're giving every business an equal go, and I think it's a much better system and more cost effective. Councillor Rosina Campbell, who is a former restaurant reviewer and barrister, would be in charge of the scheme. It comes as the Victorian government and the City of Melbourne join forces to tip $100 million into the lifeless CBD. About 1 million people visited the city centre each day before coronavirus. In August, that number had dropped by 90%. Restrictions have been loosened in Melbourne eateries and amid falling Civic 19 rates. Venues can now apply for permits to set up dining areas on footpaths, in side streets and laneways, or to operate in pop-up restaurant precincts. Okay, well, that's that scheme. Personally, I think it's a dog. Just give them cheaper. Make it easier for business, basically, and there's much simpler ways of doing it. Simple is good. Okay, now we're on to my last topic for the day, and this is one I've got a personal passion about. It's about travelling overseas, and the number of stranded Australians desperate to return home nears 36,000, but arrival caps mean some might get a flight back for 6 months. Prime Minister said on Friday there was 24,000 people registered to come home. Arrival caps mean it could take some Australians 6 months to return back home. So there are almost 36,000 Australians stranded overseas trying to get home, an increase of more than 10,000 in less than a week. The bulging figure was revealed at a Senate inquiry which heard that the personal plights of citizens desperate to get home. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said on Friday there was about 24,000 Australians registered to come home as he announced staged increase in weekly arrival caps. There are 36,000 Australians stranded overseas trying to get home, an increase of more than 10,000 in less than a week. The limit on people returning is slated to increase to 6,000 this month. At that rate, it will take 6 months for every registered return traveller to arrive back. Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet officials said hotel quarantine capacity, not the availability of flights, was stopping more people returning. The latest figures show 35,700 people want to come home. Deputy Secretary Simon Duggan told the committee commercial flights into Australia had about 20,000 spare seats each week. The availability of flights has not been a binding constraint on getting Australians home, he said. Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet officials said hotel quarantine capacity, not the availability of flights, was stopping more people returning. He said the intention was to have everybody on the list back in the country by Christmas. Our hope is, of course, that we're able to bring all Australians home in that time frame, but there are a lot of variables in calculating exactly what that will be, Mr Duggan said. Travel ban and caps on weekly arrivals have led to many Australians in vulnerable circumstances being left without a way home. Australia's outbound travel ban is one of the strictest coronavirus public health responses in the world. This is the more important article that will be the last one for the day. Australia is one of the only democracies in the world that has banned its citizens from leaving the country as a public health measure during the corona pandemic. An Australian citizen or permanent resident is not permitted to travel outbound unless they comply online to Border Force
and meet a set of strict exemption criteria. The ban, which Prime Minister Scott Morrison has called uncontroversial, I'll up yours, Scott. I think it is very controversial, the stripping Australians of the basic freedom to travel, has been in place since March 25. The Australia's busiest airport, like you've never seen it before, an empty airport, this is obviously referring to a photo. Australia's busiest airport has seen passenger numbers by 98%. So what's it like to travel as coronavirus turns the normally bustling terminals into ghost towns? It's unbelievable. Earlier this month, Finance Minister Matthias Cormann confirmed the government was taking a cautious approach and could not yet foresee the timetable by which international borders will be able to open. Just get your act together, Canberra. A Border Force spokesperson said the measures had been successful in slowing the spread of coronavirus in Australia and were implemented on the advice of the Australian Health Protection Principal Committee. Bloody doctors again are pushing the actual legislative agenda, and Morrison's too weak to fight them, of course. He's pathetic, and he basically just takes advice from bureaucrats and just accepts it. I'm really getting fed up with Scott Morrison and his lack of intestinal fortitude. The idea that citizenship carries with it an inherent right to leave the country of citizenship freely has not yet been tested in Australian law. Well, I think it's high time it was, because I think it's one of those fundamental rights that we have in this country, well, we used to have. So is there any question over the legality of the measures? How do they compare to rules in other countries? And what happens in circumstances like if you get a job offer overseas, want to leave long term, or are a dual citizen? Let's go over the criteria for being granted an exception. This is the list of criteria on the Border Force website. Your travel is as part of a response to the COVID-19 outbreak, including the provision of aid. Your travel is essential for the conduct of critical industries and business, including export and import industries. You are travelling to receive urgent medical treatment that is not available in Australia. You are travelling on urgent and unavoidable personal business. You are travelling on compassionate or humanitarian grounds. Your travel is in the national interest. You don't need to apply for an exemption if you are ordinarily a resident in a country other than Australia. So much for having an Australian passport, not worth the paper it's printed on right at the moment. An airline, maritime crew or associated safety worker, a New Zealand citizen holding a special category subclass 444 visa, engaged in the day-to-day conduct of outbound freight, associated with essential work at Australian offshore facilities, travelling on official government business, including members of the Australian Defence Force. Yeah, and members of Parliament, I might add. Scumbag politicians can come in and out of this country when they please, the arseholes. I'm really getting fed up. This used to be an egalitarian country, but it's not. It's the haves and the have-nots these days. The Border Force says the agency aims to finalise urgent and complete requests within 1 week of the proposed travel date. Other complete requests are typically processed within 2 or 3 or 4 weeks of receipt, the spokesperson said. More than 90,000 applications for exemptions have been made so far, and only a quarter of them been granted. Okay, now how does this compare to other countries? This is an important point. Professor Twoney said Australia's travel ban was rare amongst equivalent democracies. In terms of Western liberal democratic countries, actually we are very rare in imposing this kind of restriction on people leaving the country, she said. Let's look at the outbound policies of nations similar to ours. New Zealand, residents strongly advised not to travel overseas, but not banned from doing so, and that's the important point. United Kingdom, residents discouraged from all but essential travel, but not banned for doing so. You're getting the message, Scott Morrison? Singapore, residents not banned from travelling, but will have their healthcare costs covered if they go abroad and come back with the virus, but will not have their healthcare covered, I should say. Canada, residents allowed to travel, but government urging against it. Again, none of these are compulsory. People are able to travel in all these countries and wear the odd man out. It's pathetic, Scott Morrison. Get your act together, make your own decisions, and how about making the Liberal Party liberal again? So look, yeah, I'm a bit fired up over this one because I desperately want to go back to Vietnam, hopefully when summer hits here, because it's going to be very unpleasant. I'd say my first chance may be in January, but there's no guarantee. It's really frustrating for me, because like I say, it's not just the weather I want to avoid here. I enjoy the lifestyle over there, and I've got people I want to catch up with, and I just don't have the same social contacts here. So for me, it's a really big deal, and I'm really pissed off with Morrison. But not only about that, his dud policies that he's pushing forward that are costing Australians billions. I'm just really unimpressed with him as a leader at the moment. But look, I'll just leave it at that. I've done enough venting. This is very cathartic doing these videos. I get to really vent my spleen. I'm sorry you're getting all my vitriol, but I'm honest. What you see is what you get. It may not be pretty a lot of the time. But anyway, look, as usual, please give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, comment, and subscribe if you could possibly can. That'd be great. I seem to have hit a bit of a wall there at the moment. I'm on 609 subscriptions, and it's actually got up to 610, so I'm actually regressing. So some support in that area would be most appreciated, but I guess I'll just have to wait for that elusive viral video to get more views. So in the meantime, look after yourselves, enjoy the weekend. I hope it's not quite as windy where you are as it is here, but it is sunny and it's 28 degrees, so not that much to complain about. Although it's going to be windier tomorrow apparently, so I'll batten down the hatches. So catch you tomorrow with more news.